Louisiana Legends is made possible by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Louisiana. This informative, educational series enables us to discover, through the accomplishments of our fellow Louisianians, the unique character of the state so proudly served by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Louisiana for more than 65 years.
When you think of Cajun music, the name Zachary Richard is likely to be at the top of the list of talented performers from southwest Louisiana. Born in Scott, Louisiana in 1950, Zachary's musical career began at age 9 when he was chosen first soprano of the Bishop's Boys Choir of St. John's Cathedral in Lafayette. He left the country for the city of New Orleans in 1967 to attend Tulane University. In 1971, he graduated summa cum laude in history. Shortly afterward, he moved to New York City to pursue his dreams. A record contract followed, and he began to perfect his unique blend of Cajun, Zydeco, and New Orleans-style rhythm and blues. In 1976, Zachary moved to Montreal, where he recorded 7 French-language albums. Despite critical and commercial success, including 2 gold albums, a homesick Zachary returned to South Louisiana in 1981. Zachary's father, Eddie Richard.
He had an opportunity to go to New York, did some recording there, and stayed in New York a little while, played, and came back here. And eventually wound up in Montreal, Canada, with the first album there, which did well. But I suppose at the time, both he and I were too inexperienced in the music profession. So in any event, the cold winters in Montreal forced him back to Louisiana.
He began a new phase of his career, recording in English for Rounder Records and then signing with A&M Records. By 1995, he had come full circle, returning to French-language recording, re-establishing his success in both Canada and France. He has recorded 14 albums in French and English, including 3 gold and 1 platinum Canadian album. He has also written 2 books of poetry, Voyage de Nuit and Faire Récolter. In addition to his music and poetry, he has worked on several film projects dedicated to the preservation of the Cajun language and culture. He recently produced Against the Tide, the documentary story of the Acadians' exile from Nova Scotia.
I feel very strongly that an individual shouldn't take everything from a community or state or nation, but should strive to put something back if they have the ability and the time, and they should put the effort behind it. And I think Zachary has done that. The proof of that, as I mentioned before, is the awards that the French government, President Chirac, has bestowed upon him. The same in Montreal. So these things, in that perspective, I think, yes, he's probably a legend.
A frequent performer at the House of Blues in New Orleans and a staple of the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival, he has taken his music around the country and around the world, acting as an ambassador for the Cajun people and their unique culture. He has won numerous awards for his music and for his poetry. Zachary Richard's unique blend of musical styles knows no limitations. He has always pushed the envelope, creating his own spicy musical gumbo. Join us now in Zachary's Scott, Louisiana home and recording studio for more with this Louisiana legend.
I'm in Scott, Louisiana, just on the road from Lafayette, where I come from. Or maybe Lafayette's just on the road from Scott, where my guest comes from. This is the brilliant and multi-talented Zachary Richard. And Zachary, It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Thanks for coming, Gus. And I'd like to welcome you to Scott, where the West begins.
Zachary, how did it all start? This music, this poetry, out of a young man born in this part of the state.
That was the question that my family has consistently asked itself for almost 50 years now. How did that happen? I'm not from a musical family. My father jokes and says he can play something, it's just the radio. But I think there was a great love of music in the family. My grandparents, in fact, they tell the story of my grandmother, Julie Martin Boudreau, who would dance Les Quatre Coins du Mouchoir. She would put a pocket handkerchief on the floor and dance on the four corners. I never saw that, but it was a legendary feat, apparently. I also had the chance, Gus, to be nurtured by parents who gave me the opportunity to take piano lessons and guitar lessons and basically try to realize my every whim and fancy, which included a lot of artistic tendencies when I was growing up. But I guess you never know. I guess the answer to your question really is I don't know.
No explanation.
I don't know. I'm just lucky, I guess.
You went to Cathedral High in Lafayette.
Yes, sir.
And then, unbeknownst to most of our friends, this young man is a graduate of Tulane University, the second best school surely in Louisiana.
Laugh when you say that, Gus.
I'm getting a rise out of it, and that's what I wanted. Seriously, how'd you happen to go to Tulane?
Well, I was very fortunate because I was one of the. I'm from a family of modest means, and I was fortunate to have one of the legislative scholarships. I know there's been a lot of scandal and controversy about that program, but I'm here to say that without the gift from Representative Angel, I would have never had the chance to have that education. So it was politics in the classic Louisiana style, I suppose.
Hurrah for politics in the classic Louisiana style.
It allowed me to spend 4 years thinking about the world and learning things.
You were a history major.
Yes, sir.
Zachary, when did you begin to get serious? Or let me rephrase that. When did Zachary Richard, out of Scott, Cathedral High, and Tulane University, when did young Zachary Richard begin to say, you know, I might pursue this music business?
Gus, it wasn't really about the music, I don't think. It was about the counterculture. This was like the late 60s, early 70s. There was a lot of things that were going on in the culture that many of us of my generation believed was going to ultimately allow us to refashion society somehow. And music was just the flagship of the fleet. And this is a Woodstock generation. Everybody played music. Everybody smoked dope. Everybody was protesting against the war in Vietnam, everybody that I knew anyway. And so it was just part of the culture. And I never really sat down one day and said, oh, this is what I want to do with my life. I think it was a bit of disappointment for my parents, who had seen me go through high school and have a good academic career and go on to Tulane and decide that, no, I don't want to be a lawyer after all.
Oh, my goodness.
I want to take my guitar to New York and play in the street, you know, and grow long hair.
As a parent, I can imagine how that...
It was tough. It was tough because I don't think that they ever never asked themselves the questions about as long as it was something that made me happy, whether I was a doctor, lawyer, a musician, or an Indian chief, it really made no difference. But I think they were very concerned because of the risks that are involved in an artistic career.
Impossible, really.
But for me, the thing was determined, and I was lucky from the very beginning because I got out of school and I had a girlfriend and that's really been the motivation behind just about every major decision I've made in my life, and that motivation was love or passion or something. And so I moved to Pratt in Brooklyn and started playing in the street, and had an ex-history professor from Tulane who was working in a radio station in Connecticut. So late at night, after everybody had left, I made a demo, and I brought it around to different record companies, and somebody was crazy enough to give me a record deal. So here I am, 21 years old. I'm living in New York City, and I got a major record deal. So
it ain't a joke no more.
I was hooked, and I got $2,500 in advance, which is more money than I never imagined existed. And my dad said, maybe there is some hope after all.
So, Zachary, because I was about to say it's an integral part, it is your music, and I gather your life. When did the French element enter into it? You could speak French, of course. You were raised, I'm sure, in a French-speaking household.
My grandparents never spoke English.
Never spoke English.
Right.
So, you know, when I came along, as you and I discussed, in the 40s, a kid who spoke French hid it from the rest of us. Right. It was an embarrassment. When did this French suddenly come to the fore in Zachary Richard's life?
You know, I've asked myself that question, and if you believe in the law of karma, that every action has a subsequent reaction, then somehow, for me, and this is stretching it a little bit, but I believe that when I was with my grandparents as a small child, that love that they gave me, which was conducted all in French. I never heard those people ever speak English in their lives. And the people that are still engaged in the language and the struggle for the French language culture in Louisiana, all of us have the same experience, and that is we had either a parent or a grandparent with whom we were very close. And that love that we receive from those people somehow inspires us to carry on the struggle for the language. And just being with my grandmothers and my grandfather, because unfortunately I never knew my father's father, and having that love instilled, and somehow it's just sort of a spring, I guess, you know, and the pressure got to where one day there was just a series of circumstances which allowed this expression to come. And that was subsequent to that first record deal, because with that $2,500, to the great dismay of my father, I didn't put any of it in the bank and went out and bought a bunch of guitars. But I still had $400 left. So I went to Eunice, and I saw, it's here somewhere, this beautiful Brazilian rosewood 10-button diatonic Cajun accordion. And I said, I'm going to learn how to play that thing. And the first time that I pulled on the bellows, a genie came out of that accordion and just took over the rest of my life. I became passionate about the musical heritage, which I knew almost nothing about. I listened to Passepartout on Channel
3. On those, the other television, the KLFY TV.
You better get that straight.
Yeah, oh yeah, in Lafayette.
One of them others.
You're right.
On Channel 10, and my knowledge of Cajun traditional music was it, really. I didn't know anything about it, but that was part of another really important phenomenon in American culture at that time, which was everybody was going back to the roots, searching for an identity. Asleep at the Wheel and Willie Nelson were the biggest things at Jay's Lounge in Kankton, and Clifton Chenier, and all of these roots-oriented musical styles were coming to the fore in my popular culture anyway. And this accordion took me on a trip, and I've never come back.
You are one of the national heroes in Canada. I mean, they adore you in Canada. You maintain residence. You have an apartment there, and I know you keep one where in New York.
No, we don't make that kind of cash, but
he does all right, folks. Well, I've just come from his. We're in his music room where I guess you do some recording.
This is a project studio. This is where everything begins. You know, I just do it here. I'm not really well enough.
This is the incubator.
This is the incubator. Yeah.
So you also write. Oh, let's get back to Canada. How did that love affair begin?
That's an interesting question, because I got this accordion from Mark Savoy, and I was learning to play these traditional tunes. And what I wanted to do, to the great dismay of all the purists, was to mix rock and roll with traditional Cajun music, which is something that I don't know if I was able to do effectively, but nonetheless it's something that I've always wanted to do something new. I didn't want to play something that had been played before. And I became friends with Mark Savoy, who invited me to play at the Mamu Mardi Gras, the traditional ride.
Wonderful.
But I had another gig, and it was a big dilemma for me at the time, because the French-Canadian, the Quebecois delegation in Lafayette invited me to play their carnival, which is their Mardi Gras, same day, in Quebec. And I was torn between this Louisiana experience, being able to, and it was a real honor to be invited to play, and it was a mystical experience, or would have been, because I decided instead to go to Quebec. And
did Mamu forgive you?
I'm not sure. I have to ask them. But I think they got over it by now, in any event. But when we got to Canada, and it was a band of us, and we were playing Cajun country rock stuff, and we were welcomed with open arms. And I guess probably this might not sound as romantic as it was at the time, but I made more money in one day on Canadian TV than I had in my entire career.
That's
playing
very romantic.
in dance halls in Louisiana. So I said, maybe there's a message here. And
how much time do you spend in Canada?
About half of the time.
Half of the time.
Yeah.
Do the winters there bother you, the bitter cold?
Gus, I don't stay for the winter. That's the half.
You do
that
not stay for the winter. That's the other thing. It gets pretty cold there, huh?
I was up in February, this past February, at a place called Sept-Îles. I have some friends who live on it, who are Native Americans, and there's a song on my next album which is called Pagayer, which means to paddle, and it's a song about the original French coureurs de bois, the first adventurers who crossed this great continent, the first Europeans to go and to brave. Long before Lewis and Clark, there were French men who had made the trip, not all the way, but anyway, at least as far as St. Louis. But nonetheless, I wanted there's a chorus, and I wanted some Indians. So I went to a place called Maliutenam. These are Innu people. My good friend Florent Volant. This was in February, and it was real cold. But it's a beautiful, pristine cold. This is not that far from the Arctic Circle, and the snow never melts from November to May, really, and so you don't get the slush you would in Montreal. Everything is just like white, it's like powdered sugar. And
how much of the time are you on the road?
As little as possible, but it turns out to be anywhere from 6 to 8 months a year.
Playing all over the world?
Playing playing mostly Canada lately, Europe. We were in Europe last year. All over North America and Europe. I've played in Japan and would like to go back, but haven't had a chance.
What's the greatest honor you ever received for your music that meant the most to you?
I think the thing that was probably the most meaningful was the fact that my dad loaned me the money to make my first album. You know, that's not an honor, it's not an award, but it's something that means the most to me, because here I was with a dream and no way to realize it, and you know, the importance of family, the importance of my family is something that I cannot overemphasize. My wife is my business partner and manager, and she's always with me on the road, and if it weren't for that, I don't think I'd be on the road at all. I'd probably be at the Holiday Inn.
You told me she's a tough critic.
Yeah, but she's a real sweet gal. You know,
okay.
She's got other talents to make up for it. But she's a very honest woman, and she tells it like it is.
And Zachary, you write poetry, do you not? I'm
Thus
holding here a copy of one of his poetry books. Would you tell us what this means? Because, of course, I speak no French.
Faire récolte means to harvest.
And that gentleman a person you see harvesting this crop is Zachary Richard. Would you mind singing for us?
My grandmother would say, Le bon Dieu me respecte quand je travaille, mais il m'aime quand je chante.
Meaning?
Meaning God respects me when I work, but he loves me when I sing.
I love that.
If you come out from Baton Rouge going west or come out from Lafayette going east, you'll cross the Atchafalaya Basin. And there's a sign which is unfortunately misspelled, but we're working on that one step at a time. It's called Lac Bijou, which is sort of the way they pronounce it, but I believe what it should read is Lac Bijou, which is the jeweled lake, on the shores of the jeweled lake. And this song is inspired by that little body of water and by the fact that the swallows come back to Louisiana every Mardi Gras, as you know. And this is a song about one of the swallows who make this incredible journey down to Brazil and fly all the way back, and comes back year after year, and the singer is so enamored by these swallows. But this song sort of has a bittersweet ending, because at the end one of the swallows is left alone and the other didn't make the trip back.
Anyone who does not respond to that music and to Zachary Richard is like that ice up in Canada that never melts. Really, you feel so intensely, and God has given you the ability to draw the rest of us into your feelings, and the only way I can describe that is artistry, because a lot of folks play a guitar, a lot of folks sing, television filled with it, but my goodness, you and your music and your songs are one and the same. You're the real thing, and how very lucky we are that you're one of us here in Louisiana.
Well, you said the right word, Gus. It's a gift. It's a gift of God, or it's a gift. It comes from someplace somehow, and I'm just really lucky to. I think artists generally are sort of the antennas of society, and to be able to cap the vibes, because what I sing about is humanity. It's the same thing. What I sing about are the things that make me feel, which are the same things that make everybody feel. Joy, sorrow, all of the emotions. And to be able to transmit that, and that's my greatest joy, or one of them anyway, in my life, is to be able to share that experience through my music with people.
May I ask you, please, sir, to play one more? Merci.
Merci à vous.
Louisiana Legends is made possible by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Louisiana. This informative educational series enables us to discover, through the accomplishments of our fellow Louisianians, the unique character of the state so proudly served by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Louisiana for more than 65 years.
For a copy of this program, call 1-800-973-7246 or go online to www.lpb.org.